I have a lovely guest, Helen, today, and we are going to answer a parenting question for this lovely mom. So, Helen, will you please introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Helen. I am a mother to a 9-year-old, and I am from the West Coast.
Amazing. Now, tell us what happened. So, we before this we were talking about an incident that happened. Maybe do you want to describe it to me, and let's get into it?
Yeah, so for some reason, even though I just love my son so much, I seem to think that if I say these hurtful things, I will kind of get what I'm looking for. We were talking, and honestly, it's usually to do with academics or homework or something like that, where I feel like he knows the answer, but he's kind of not giving it to me. So lately, his oral language has been a little weird, and I feel like he's been saying silly stuff. We were out in public, and he kind of said some weird, silly stuff. And I said, "Honey," we got in the car, and I did not say honey, by the way. Actually, I was more stern and not nice. I said, when you say stuff like that and people are laughing, they're not laughing with you. They're laughing at you because what you have said doesn't make sense. It's so ridiculous. And I just kept like I kept going and I kept going until he started crying. And in my head, I was like, you need to stop, you need to stop. But I just kept drilling the point home.
Yeah.
And this is something I do quite frequently where I say hurtful things when
Yeah.
I don't want to.
No, I know. I can tell you don't want to. And I'm sorry. It's hard. Tell me, um, tell me a little bit about your parents.
So my mom was very similar. She would yell a lot of like when it was homework time. If I wasn't getting it and she couldn't really tell me, she would yell. She would like throw books at me, like throw stuff off the table.
Mhm.
Um, so that is very similar. I mean, I've never done any of that stuff yet.
Mhm.
But my parents, they're happily married, they're together. I had a good home life, but my mom was definitely has similar characteristics to me.
Yeah. And do you remember how it felt when your mom, like, threw the books or got mad at you or, like, do you remember that feeling?
Yeah, not like specifically in the moment, obviously, because I was little, but I know that it probably hurt. And like her and
Okay.
I have, we have a relationship, but I wouldn't say it's the best in the world.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah.
Yeah. It's hard when we come from a certain, you know, background or upbringing. It gets kinda stuck in our psyche, and it's hard to get out. And I'm a recovering yeller, and still in my worst moments, I will want to yell, and I have yelled even in the last year, and I think it's because, I grew up in a house that everyone was yelling and screaming at each other, and so when we have a similar situation, so it sounds like homework is that similar situation or
Hmm.
schoolwork, it feels like you almost feel as if you are the child again, and you get into this fight, flight, or freeze place because you're in this parent relationship, right? But you're
Hmm.
not actually the child anymore. You're the parent in this parent child relationship, but it pings you right back to when you were 9 years old.
Hmm.
And so you have that core memory in there and you respond from that place. So, a couple of things that I think are important that might help you is to really sit down and journal about what it really felt like for you in all of those moments,
Hmm.
and then really reflecting on how do you want your son to feel in those hard moments when school is hard and when things are tough. What is it that you want him to feel? What would you have wanted to feel, Helen, back when you were 9 years old? How would you have wanted your mom to respond to you about homework?
I would want him to, or I would have wanted my mom to make me feel loved and proud, even though in those moments, like I might not be getting it. I would want him to feel like I'm still proud of him because I think I never really felt like my mom was. I know my mom loves me, but I don't necessarily know if I felt it in that moment or felt that she was proud of me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think journaling about that and continuing to write about it and get it out and really like bring it back to the forefront for you. Because if you can have empathy for little Helen, it will help you have empathy for your son. So
That makes
that's
sense.
one thing I would work on just a little bit. I think that would be helpful. I think there's some rewiring we can do about homework, around homework. And I really like to just say, like, I don't care about it. I'm
Okay.
not tied to it. I don't care if my kids do it or they don't do it because it's there, especially at this age. He's 9. So
Mhm.
he's 9, right? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
sorry. I have all these ages in my head thinking of all these other kids, but yes, 9. And if he's 9 and he has 9-year-old homework, he can do his 9-year-old homework. You don't have to do it with him. You can be there and say, listen, if you need my help, then please ask. But often we can't really help them with their homework getting into 10, 11, 12, 13. Like, I it's hard
Yeah.
and it's their work and it needs to be reflective of what they can do, not of what we can do. And if they can't do it, I think it's okay to say, you know what? You need to write your teacher a note and say, I couldn't do this. This was too hard for me. And that needs to go back to the teacher. And perhaps the teacher, needs to reteach it.
Yeah.
Perhaps that, the child isn't getting it and that's okay. And so tell me what it's like at home around homework, like your process and
Okay. Well, so yeah, it's usually like weekly stuff. So he does spelling and he's always working on reading. I work in schools and I teach reading, and so I'm very much I think a lot of my stress comes from that. I see kids falling behind and I don't want my son to fall behind.
Mhm,
And so I'm really on it about like,
mhm.
okay, we need to do our spelling, we need to do our reading for the night. So it's not necessarily homework that he needs to do on his own, but like I have to give him the spelling words and then he has to do them. And then we read out loud because he reads books and then goes to school and takes tests on them. So, but because I'm so hyper focused, I feel like he needs to be reading out loud to me, and I can be a little intense on like, you didn't get that word right. So I definitely come in hot.
Hot.
And there's been times that he's brought math home and he's like, I don't know how to do this. And I'm like, well, you said you did. And then it's like, well, right now I don't know how to. But then, like, his teacher will be like, well, it turns out he was just fine. He did it for me at school. So I think it was the way I was coming in to him. He maybe got scared and like overwhelmed.
Yes, Helen, you're so smart. You were getting it. You don't need me.
I
It's
don't stop though. I keep, I know it, but the cycle is
well,
real.
I think really thinking about it in terms of like letting go. I'm a former teacher too. I spent 13 years in public school and I had both my girls reading before they went to preschool. But in preschool, both of them told me, "I'm not doing your work anymore, mom," because I was pretty intense
Yeah.
about having them learn sight words.
Hmm.
It doesn't make kids any smarter to push them into academics, and it actually eats at their self-esteem, so then when they come to the subject matter, they're offline and they can't learn as well.
Hmm.
And so if you can completely, I don't know if you can do this, Helen, but maybe you can. If you can completely let go and say, "Okay, does he really have to read aloud or does he not? Are you married?
Yes.
So could you have him read with your husband? That might be a better place for them to, like,
Yeah, we
bond."
have in the past, but he gets home like 8, 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
So it just depends what time of season, but we have talked about that. Um, but a lot of the times it's just me and him. Like we're a package deal.
Fair enough. I Does he have to read aloud? Is that something he has to do?
In my head, I've convinced myself that like K through 3, he really needs to be reading aloud just to make sure. Because he's a typical boy. If I give him a book and say, go read a couple chapters, I'm thinking we're skimming. I'm thinking we're not really like in in the zone again. me being the crazy person that I am.
You're not crazy, you're worried and you
Yeah,
want him to do well, and so that's
yeah,
not crazy, but I think, we can take the joy out of reading by
mhm,
making it so required and rote and a chore, and I think it's a beautiful thing if we can let reading be pleasurable, and if
mhm.
he doesn't read, is he behind in reading?
He's kinda right on that cusp, like, because he's, like, right on the line of, like, being on grade level,
Mhm.
um, I'm always fearful that, like, if we don't work, he could easily, like, slip below the line.
I know, but I think is it worth your relationship?
Yeah, at this point, it's seeming like and like you said, like, he got in the car today and he took one of his tests and he was like, "Well," I said, "How did it go?" And he was like, "It went good." And he's been getting 100%, but today he didn't, and he was like, "Well, wasn't it good that I got 9 out of 10? Like, I only missed 1, mom?" And I didn't respond for a little bit, and then I said, "Well, did you try your best?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, good." But I wasn't showing that I was proud of him because in my head, I was like, "He didn't get 100%."
Right. And then so it's like, do we want them to be point mongers and grade mongers? And because those grades and those points, especially at 9 years old, they don't matter. They
Yeah,
matter for nothing. They really do. And he will read and he will get there on his own path. And I don't know if reading aloud every night is going to necessarily in the long run, right? And
yeah,
we're talking like 20 years from now or 10 years
mhm,
from now. I don't know if reading out loud right now will be better or worse for him later on. My daughter, who's 19 now, she's in college. She was an avid reader. She was reading Harry Potter in kindergarten. She loved to read all the time, constantly reading. She went to high school, middle school really, and they started, reading became very required. You had to read
mhm,
these books, you had to do and now she refuses to read because it's been so shoved down her throat. But
yeah,
she's a beautiful reader, but she doesn't like it anymore. And so it's
yeah,
like, I don't know, do we wanna cultivate a love for reading? Do we wanna, like, all sit down and read together? Do you wanna read to him? Do you wanna find a are there ways to present literature and reading in a different way where it's not just making him read aloud and then correcting him every time he does a word wrong?
yeah,
Because
that
I
makes
think
sense.
it might eat away at his self-esteem.
Mhm,
And so if you, maybe you read aloud to him. Maybe you guys pick a chapter book that's well above his grade level that you can read to him at night, and that's a better way to bond.
mhm,
I
yeah,
would find maybe a different way to read
yeah,
or maybe you're reading in front of him.
mhm,
So you're modeling reading as opposed to forcing him to do it.
yeah,
I might
that
just
makes sense.
take a little step back on the read aloud, and it'll probably bring you guys a lot closer.
Mhm,
Yeah. And then with being really involved in his test and his homework and all that, I would kind of take a little tiny step back, and we want him to be responsible for his work, and we want him to decide if he is proud about it or if he isn't proud about it, and so we don't need to have any judgment around it really.
mhm,
So just not even commenting about his work and not you're not you're not super happy and you're not super sad. You're just neutral about his work. You want
yeah,
him to think you love him as a person instead.
mhm, that makes sense.
So I think just backing off a little, just
Mhm,
pulling back a little, giving him a little space to just to fail if he does, to maybe not turn the homework in if he doesn't do it, to be okay with not getting perfect scores and just, you know, loving him through it.
mhm, that makes
S
sense.
Do you ask him every day, "Do you have homework?" or "What's the story?" or blah, blah, blah?
Yeah, not those words verbatim, but yeah, most of the time it's like, um and we're pretty routine people, and so, yeah, it's very much like that, and I can't explain why I know 3rd grade is not that big of a deal. I can't explain why other than maybe it's just because I'm so immersed in seeing kids fall behind that I'm just so worried he's gonna fall behind even though he hasn't thus far.
Yeah, he hasn't, and I think keeping telling yourself that, like, he hasn't, and there's another academic idea out there that we focus on what the kid is good at.
Mhm.
So, like, if he's really good at science or math or history or whatever, or even if he's just really good at baseball or whatever it is, when we focus on what our kids' gifts are, it translates in self-esteem to their other where they're struggling. And
That makes sense.
when we focus so much on the struggle, we're telling them they're not good enough. You have to do this because you need to make sure you don't fall behind, and it's really important, and you're not good enough and you have to fix it, and it makes them feel like they're at a deficit.
Mhm.
And so sometimes I like to say, like, just take all the focus off the things that you're for in your instance worried that they will fail at,
Mhm.
and focus on what they're doing well, and really making sure he knows that he's doing some things well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd say when you come home from school, you might try, like, tomorrow, just not saying anything, not asking him about his work, not and see what he does.
Yeah.
See if he gets it out. See if he starts working on it. See if he asks you for help. Let him have a little bit space and see what happens, and try to take a back seat to it all.
Okay.
I think it will bring you guys closer because you won't have this rift between you where you're constantly talking about homework and school.
Mhm. I agree.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that does.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's doable. I think I can do it. Um, and I think it's probably a good time, like, we're getting close to the end of the year, so maybe this is a good time for me to, really try to pull back and just kinda see what happens.
Yeah.
And I want him to feel like I'm proud of him, and I feel like in these moments, he's looking for my approval because he doesn't feel proud of himself,
Mhm.
and I don't want that.
No, you don't. And I don't you're none of this you're doing is intentional. It's all just out of fear
Mhm,
and out of your own childhood experience. So I think it's totally doable. And I think one other thing, that you might consider is trying to give your son 8 hugs a day.
okay.
I think this is the age where the affection starts to kind of like it's not as much as it was when they were 6 and
Mhm,
5, and so really trying to give him lots of affection and giving him affection in the moments where you think he's feeling judged.
okay,
So
that makes sense.
if you ask him about the test and then he doesn't say anything, just giving him a hug.
Okay,
Say, "Whatever you do on these dumb tests, it doesn't matter. It's all good. You can never disappoint me. You're always succeeding in my world. These grades and these tests, they don't matter, and they are not a testament of who you are."
I
And just
guess.
keep telling him that message.
Yeah, I think that's good because I definitely feel like I'm always the he leans more towards my husband, and I think that's because I'm just around more and I'm always harping on him, and I'm always like our relationship is really, really different, and so I probably do need to go back to those things.
Yeah, and I wonder too, maybe you could try this too, is like 1 whole week of not mentioning any grades or tests, and 1 whole week of not correcting him at all.
Yeah,
And then I wonder how you both would feel after a whole week of that.
mhm,
I bet
probably.
things would feel different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they would too.
Yeah, I
I
think
think
so
they
too.
would too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, are you wearing an Oregon shirt?
Yes.
My daughter goes to Oregon.
Yes. Yes, I
You
am.
you did you go there?
I did go just for a brief time,
Ah,
and then I moved back home to marry my husband. But
ah.
yes, yes,
My
we
daughter went, and I went, and my ex-husband went, and his dad went. We all went.
okay, that is awesome.
Yeah. Go
Go
Ducks.
Oregon. Yeah.
Yes. Go Ducks. Helen, thank you so much for coming on. This
Yes.
was so lovely. I know you are gonna make huge strides with him. It's not even gonna take much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of the help, and I'm looking forward to implementing it.
Good, I'm so glad. Thank you for joining me on the Peace and Parenting podcast, everyone. We'll see